Hello and welcome to something new. This is Happy by Name, and this is a show featuring me, your host, Ollie Happy. This show was formerly known as Gone Workabout, which was a really clever name that played on the fact that Aboriginal people of Australia, the Indigenous people there, would go on a walkabout when they went off into the bush to find themselves, to think about life. And I liked that idea. And I like the fact that I have moved country a couple of times now, from New Zealand to Australia to England, and that each time I've been finding myself, but I've also been working. Seems clever, right? But nobody could remember it. So here we are, using my real name, Happy, for the first time. So Happy by Name is continuing the tradition of Gone Workabout. It is about meaningful conversations. So we meet a lot of interesting people in our lives, and some of those people are willing to have a conversation and share it with the world. I'm really grateful to those people, and you're about to hear the first episode. So I hope you enjoy this, and I hope you get as much out of it as I did. Okay. So today I'm joined by Artem, a colleague of the last 6 months and friend who lives in Kyiv in the Ukraine. Welcome, Artem.
Thank you, Ollie. It's great to be here.
So this, and I'm really excited about this conversation. So a little bit of background, folks. We have worked together for the last 6 months or longer. And as you do when you work together remotely, you talk a lot about work and a little bit about home. And the little pieces that we've talked about over time, I realized there was just a long list of things that I wanted to come back to. And I thought, if there are interesting things for us to talk about, then let's share that wisdom with others. So, and there's one very compelling reason, apart from the fact that you're just an interesting person who I get along with well. The other reason is that you live in Kyiv, and that is a part of the world that is experiencing its darkest hour in quite some time. And it's, without being too political, what I'm hoping we can do, and I know we will do, is just open a window into your world and allow you to take us on a descriptive journey of what it's like to be in Kyiv at the moment. And I know that out of that, we will come across a lot of things that you are doing as coping mechanisms that remind me a lot of my grandmother during the Blitz and World War II in England. And those coping strategies are valuable learnings for everybody in the world right now. So thank you for agreeing to be on and for being open about something that's so difficult. So maybe we start with that.
Yes, sure. And thank you for having me. I think it's an important topic and a good thing to share with others. And as you mentioned before briefly, that main thing that people see these days is just some headlines about some bombardments, airstrikes, and things that actually can make a headline on the fourth year of war. So most of the things, they just became routine. So the war is becoming more and more bloody, more aggressive from day to day. But you won't see this in the headlines, as it's probably from the point of view of people outside of Ukraine. It seems like, well, is it still going on? A lot of people are actually unsure if there is still a war going, because they don't see a lot of news. But for me, it's also changing. Like, it doesn't feel like the first days or weeks or months of war. So just we were supposed to record this podcast a week ago on Wednesday, and
Yes.
so actually that was the first day where I had my apartment building, not actually mine, but the building, the next building that I live in, where I live, the next building was hit, and so it was the first time where I actually heard the glass shattering from the building where I live, and I realized that I just went back to sleep after 5 minutes. So the way how you adapt to all the things that are happening, it is kind of standard for all the people. So the way we live is that we normalize everything. And so I cannot imagine myself being okay if if I hear an explosion and hear the glass shattering from my building where I live. But on the 4th year of war, I just went back to sleep. And I think this is probably the key answer to like how people actually live, like how you can have huge attacks at night and then go on living the day, doing the work, drinking cocktails in the evening. It is possible because people adapt to everything. And I think this is one of the most dangerous things that we have is the normalization of all the things that are happening. And
Yes.
you know, if you just take that perspective and apply it not on the war-torn country, but if you just apply it to your regular daily life, you will see the same pattern. So you will see that we develop our comfort zones, and so some things that may not be okay for us, we treat them like they're okay. And in this case, it just raises to an extreme point where you have this near-death experience and you don't even blink. So that's probably the difference. But that is something that we can all see in our daily lives, that we actually normalize things that shouldn't be normalized, and it happens to all of us. So that is probably the main answer to how people live, like when you have this horrible attacks almost every night, and then you still go on and carry on with your day. Adaptation, main thing.
Yeah. It's remarkable what people are able to adapt to, isn't it? Can you give a bit of a idea of what you mean when you say attacks come every night? What does that mean?
Sure. Well, from our point of view, the way it looks like is that you get a notification on your mobile phone that there is an air raid alarm. So you can actually hear the alarms in the city, but you get a notification sooner. It works much faster. So you get a notification, you can see the type of attack that is happening. So you can see if it's a ballistic missile, if it's a cruise missile, if it's drones, or it's combined attack with all of that, which is usually the case. And so you can see all these details. And so you can then make a decision for yourself what you want to do. You can go to the shelter. So there are a lot of shelters around the city, subway stations, special shelters in public places. And so you can go there. A lot of people still do that on the 4th year of war. So people still go to the shelters and they don't sleep the night. So they're exhausted and they have to carry on with the day, though they haven't slept the night. So that still happens, but a lot of people like myself adapted to the point that we don't go, so that you just stay in bed, and so you just hope that it's going to be okay. And so, like this last week, I heard the drone. So you can actually hear the drones because they're relatively slow compared to the missiles, and there are a lot of them. So you can actually hear them flying. It's like this little bike, but in the sky. And so you can hear the sound of it, and you can hear how it goes down when it goes to attack something. And so that's the sound to which you actually react. Like if you hear it coming down, so that's like you're in a danger zone. And so the thing that I remember is that I was sleeping and I heard that through the night, through my sleep. So I heard this drone coming down, and so I just fell over my bed, and so I heard the explosion, glass shattering, trees falling, and just stood up, checked my windows. My windows were fine, and after 5 minutes, I just went back to sleep. And so that's how it looks like from our perspective. And so the next morning, I just woke up and carried on with my daily routine. I went to grab some coffee, checked damaged buildings, and actually yesterday, my friend hosted people who suffered from that explosion that I mentioned, and so she hosted them in her place. And one of the remarkable things that still remains is that 4 years into this war, people still help each other. Like if you have someone who suffered from an attack, so you help them if you can. So that is one of the remarkable things, I think, because no matter how you adapt, no matter how you normalize it, you still have this feeling that you just want to help. It's not like an obligation. You just feel like you want to.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thing. about a year ago, I suppose, myself and co-host on another show I have called Problem Busters, had another former colleague who has been fundraising from his house in Italy and filling up a four-wheel drive and with provisions and driving it across to Ukraine and out to wherever it's needed. And I'll never forget him saying, and I'll put a link to that episode in the show notes, because it's powerful and important also. He said the best thing that happens, the only good thing I think he said in this situation, is how much people wanted to help. And that he told a story of pulling into, going along the Autobahn and pulling into a services gas station and adding things to the vehicle that he'd filled up with provisions, and a Swiss guy stopping and saying, "What are you doing with this big crazy four-wheel drive all full of sleeping bags and water bottles and the things that people need during this kind of period?" And he said, "Oh, I'm taking some provisions over to friends and people that need them." And the guy said, "What do you need?" And he just gave him 150 euros and said, "Is that enough? Do you need more?" And so he just went back into the shop and added a whole lot more things. And it reminds me of a quote from the Dalai Lama, that we really see the true humanity in times of difficulty.
That is so true. And one thing that really hit me, I remember that in the beginning of the full-scale invasion, I had this guy messaging me from how was it called? So there is a thing. It's like a set of different co-living spaces across the world. So they're in different areas. I was in the one that was in Mexico. And so I spent there like a month probably when I was living in Puerto Vallarta. And so they reached out to me, checking in if I was okay, because they knew that they could see that I was from Ukraine from my application. So they knew that I'm from Ukraine, and they were just checking in to see how I am. And so they told me that they just want to give me a free next year subscription so that I can keep it. So I told them that I'm not going to use it, but they told me still just in case you can keep it. And also they gave me the contact of one guy from Austria who really wanted to help. And so he actually wanted to come to Ukraine and join the International Legion. So that's how it was for him. So he had no relatives in Ukraine. He had no one here. So he just saw the news, and he was so emotional about what was happening that he actually wanted to come here and join the fight. I told him, because back in the days, there were a lot of people in Ukraine who wanted to join the fight, but there were just not enough ammunition. There were just not enough guns, not enough equipment. So there were more people willing to fight than there were like means to do that. And so I told him that it's not going to be useful if you just come. So if you can arrange something from Austria, anything that can help, that would be great. He donated a lot of money. So he was just the first thing he did, he just donated 10,000 euros straight away. And so he also then joined some guys from Austria who were organizing different types of help for humanitarian help. And so he was working with them to also provide more help. And it was so remarkable for me to see that person with so much passion, just trying to do something good for others, for people he doesn't know, for the country that he has never been to. And that was incredible for me. So that was the moment that I probably remember. I will remember till the end of my life. So that was something that made me feel like we're not alone, and that there are a lot of people out there who want to help.
Yeah, that's awesome. And my honest, I mean, I am Mr. Happy, but so my life may have been colored through optimism, but it's my honest belief that most people are good. And there's just a couple that have lost their way or decided to do negative things, and the rest of us pay the consequences. So it's really important to be reminded of that at times like these, isn't it?
And I think I share that perspective with you. I think that inherently people are people are basically more good than bad. There will never be just good around people. Everyone is a little bit of mixture, and so like
Yeah.
if there is no bad, there is no good. So it's like front and back, black and white. So you cannot have all the good people around you. So you need the bad for contrast as well. But I do share that perspective that there are very few people who are inherently bad people and with bad intentions. So most people try to do good.
Yeah. Agreed. Let's rewind a bit in your life now. And if you don't mind, let's talk about what it was like growing up in Ukraine. And, I'm going to ask lots of history questions because I'm really interested in the region and what I understand was the first empire of the region, right?
Well, it's I won't try. I will try not to bother you with too many names and dates. So I'll just try to keep it high level so that it will be interesting. But if we were to start with me, I was born in 1994, right after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Actually, I was born on the Independence Day, so
Oh,
I'm
wow.
3 years younger than my country officially. So it was an interesting experience because if you take Soviet Union and 16 republics that constituted the Soviet Union, so all those republics, they were living in a different type of economy, and also that type of economy meant that these people had to be different mentally from what people in the West are. Like if you have capitalism as the main way of living, it requires people to be more proactive. It requires people to be entrepreneurial. It requires initiative. And in communism, well, they were trying to build communism. They were socialism. What is required is for everyone to know their place and to do their job. And initiative, entrepreneurship, all of that are bad words for that type of society. And so you can imagine that it's like a mirrored society where every initiative is punishable, where every proactive position in any regard may also be punishable. And so this creates this type of people who are actually very passive and who are not trying to take responsibility for their lives. And then the Soviet Union collapses. And we enter the free market, we enter the capitalism, we enter the new type of world. Everything is, but the borders are open. People can travel, people can see new things. And suddenly everything is upside down. And whoever was the most creative, the most active, the most entrepreneurial, got the upper hand. And so these were the times where the entire country, the entire society had to rebuild to the new ways of like adjust to the new ways of how to make money. You cannot just go to the same factory for 35 years, knowing for sure that it won't close because the government will keep it running, even if it's non-profitable. So it's whole new world. And so people were just trying to figure out how to live in this new world. And 90s in Ukraine and any post-Soviet country was a very criminal, as you can imagine, it's like the Wild West type of thing, very criminal and very hard time, but also the time of freedom, time of opportunity, and time of this fundamental change that started to happen in people's mindsets. So it was a very challenging time economically, I would say. So I was not from the poorest family. Like we always had food, we always had a place to live. But if I would just compare it to the standards of living in Ukraine today, that is like extremely poor. So just everyone was poor, so that's why it felt okay. Talking about adaptation and normalization. So it was a challenging time because there were a lot of criminal elements. There were instability all around. So like you couldn't know what will happen tomorrow. And so that was also an interesting time to grow up because I was growing up in the times where um, we were still running on the legacy from the Soviet Union. All the books, all the programs, like even if you go to school, you still have the books from the Soviet Union times. And so as I was growing up, I saw how all of that was changing, replacing, and so how the new identity, which is Ukrainian identity, was shaped from the ashes of that Soviet Union um, leftovers, I would say. And I think I saw all the layers. It feels like there were layers of Soviet Union that were just falling apart year by year by year. And probably last 10 years are actually the time where Ukraine is truly Ukraine, with its own identity, with all these leftovers properly taken away, and with this new type of culture that we have. Because most of the time when I was a kid, I just remember the leftovers of the Soviet Union all over the place, and I think it probably will be the same in any other post-Soviet country.
Right, like buildings, vehicles, the ways that people would behave and socialize, the ways that people behaved at work, all of those things, right?
Everything from little like physical elements, yes, things that we use, to most importantly the ways how people behave, the words that people use. You cannot imagine how many things we say unconsciously, like some words that we use that just they constitute something, but we don't think much about what we say when we say those things. And there were so many different like cliches that remained from the Soviet Union times that people carried on. It was interesting to see the unfold of it, and how all of that were just staying in the past, and the new identity was forming. And like talking about the war that we have today, the people running Russia today, they are people from Soviet Union times. They were born there, they grew up there, and they probably have zero idea of what is Ukraine today. What are the people here today? What is the culture and identity here today? They probably only have the image of Ukraine that existed 35 years ago. And so fundamentally, they cannot even comprehend what is Ukraine, what they're trying to conquer.
It's a crazy thought, but I could totally see how that would happen. And living through, although this is a much smaller problem in the world, living through the Brexit vote in England was a real moment of understanding of class, and the fact that some people are educated and some people are not. Probably fewer are educated than are. And also recognizing that people vote for the world that they want to live in. And quite a few of those people, as they get older, vote for the world they used to have. And I've seen things where people talked about, if the voting age had been 2 years younger, then we would not have seen England leave the EU. If the voting age ended 5 years younger, we would not have left the EU. It's incredible to think that. And then the other thing that goes along with that is just how much the world changes in a human lifetime. I remember talking. Yeah.
Also, it's interesting that we constantly speed up. We pick up the speed, and we're going faster and faster. So if you compare, the world that was 300 years ago and 400 years ago, there wouldn't be such a dramatic difference. But if you compare the world that we live in today and we had 30 years ago, the difference is dramatic. So the speed of evolution, the speed of technology growth, especially as we enter the digital era. So in this era, everything is so much faster. Like, can you imagine that 3 years ago we didn't use AI in our daily life? We didn't have all the AI tools. We didn't talk about that. So right now, even simple questions, simple things, we just go straight to Claude or ChatGPT, and it just happens in an instance. And if you look technologically, and also from the point of view of society, this is like a huge milestone. This is the big evolutionary step that we have made.
Yes, and we're the ways that it affects us will really only become clear in the years to come, right?
Yeah. So it's hard to keep up with the evolution that we have today, and I think that a lot of people are really struggling with that. And if you look at the generations, like if you take someone who is 70 plus years old, like
Yes.
they're not living in the same world as we live in today. They live in the image of the world that from the times when they were young.
Yes. And they think the way that people thought at that time, and they talk the way people talked at that time.
And they cherish that time. Because, well, we all tend to cherish the time of like when we were the youngest, the healthiest, the best versions of ourselves. So we cherish this time. And so same happens with older people in power, especially with absolute power. So they can
And
just
it honestly makes me feel like perhaps that should be an exclusionary factor in access to absolute power. I know that that's an ageist statement, but if you look at the activities of very young leaders versus the activities of very old leaders, I think that the actions speak for themselves.
I agree with you. But the challenge is that when someone acquires an absolute power, well, it's very hard to take it from them. And so then
Yeah.
they set the threshold for the age.
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
set
Don't
it.
they say that's the first indicator of a dictator is that they say, right, so be probably good if I could just stay in power forever. Let's change the rules.
Yeah, like in Russia, they just changed the constitution. That's it.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, so tell us a bit more about Ukraine. Like some people will know that it's the biggest country in Europe. They
Yes.
won't know much. They will know that it's near to Russia and that it was in the USSR, but probably not a lot more.
Yeah, probably not a lot more. So I can tell something that wouldn't be a history lesson, but something that will paint the picture. So probably something that is worth sharing about Ukraine is that its geography is quite unique for Europe. Uh, Ukraine has the biggest amount of the fertile lands in Europe, and also, if you talk about specific type of the black soil, the biggest amount of black soil in the world. So it's very fertile soil. You just put something in the ground, it grows, and it grows well. So it has been a very desirable area for many different empires, because until the moment we had the industrial revolution, the only way for any empire, any kingdom to grow is only horizontal, right? You acquire more lands, more people to work on that land, and so that's how you grow. So you just capture more land, and so that was the main growth for all empires, and all empires had to constantly grow. So Ukraine, being in between a few different empires, was always a contested area, was always a contested land, and it was a part of different kingdoms, different empires throughout the history, and all these different empires, and they always tried to claim this old state that was before all of those empires, that was called Kiev Rus. And Kievan Rus was the first state in this area. And so we had the capital city in Kiev, and all the different principalities around it were subjects to the main grand prince in Kiev. And in the times of 12, when was 11, 12th century, it was a very prosperous kingdom. It was huge. Like there if you compare Paris of that time, which was under 10,000 people, and Kyiv was 50,000 people, so it was much bigger city, and it was much more developed. So there is a famous queen of France called Anne of Kyiv. So she was actually from Kyiv. She was the daughter of Yaroslav, that was ruling in Kyiv at the time. And so she was very unhappy to go to Paris from Kyiv because it was a small and dirty city. And she did a lot of work to make it much nicer and to make it more European. And so she was remembered well in France, and she still has some statues and some memorials to her in France. And it's interesting because that it sounds weird that someone from Kyiv would come to Paris and clean it up and make it more European. But that's what she did. That's what she did. And it's not a well-known fact, but it kind of paints the picture of what was the state here at that time. And also it was quite just state. So they had their own set of rules, documented rules, like you actually had laws. And so all the main questions were always decided on something that was called veche. It's like the big gathering of people in the town. And so they were making decisions by the majority of votes. So it was kind of like the elements of democracy, almost, at the times. And so this was never a state with an absolute monarchy. So it was always divided into these different principalities with their own different set of rules, with one grand prince in Kyiv. Until the times that the Golden Horde came from the east and wiped out the state. And so then it was split between different other empires, and it never came back into a single country ever again. So that state died effectively back then. So different parts of it had different sets of history, and one part of it landed in the hands of Muscovy. It was called, before Russia became Russia, taking the name of the old Rus. They were called the Moscow, and so
two interesting facts, because I love food. We had Muscovy ducks when I was a child, which are large, as you know, large white ducks with sort of red heads that are much bigger than Western European ducks.
Yeah, and so effectively from that moment where Muscovy appeared on the map, which was later after the Kiev and Rus times. So they were trying to claim their rights for this land. And it only in the times of the in the 17th century, they renamed from Muscovy to Russia to claim also in their name that they're the ancestors, the successors of this old Kyiv state that existed in these territories. And so they were just trying to get more territories here, and they were justifying that they're taking those territories because they are the successors of that old state, which, well, they had nothing to do with. So it was a separate state, a whole separate combination of things. But that's the way people did things back in the days. You claim that something is yours and then you try to take it. So that's the way any empire operated. And
it's not so different to today, is it?
Yeah, little difference. We didn't go too far from those times, unfortunately. No. But yeah, that's like the way how all the monarchs operated. So you claim that this is your land by right, by history, and so then you try to take it from others. And there were other actors. So there was the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth that had the most of the Ukrainian territories and the most of the Kievan Rus territories in their ownership, and so it was much easier for Ukrainian territories in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth back in the days because it wasn't an absolute monarchy. They actually had Sejm, they had their parliament, and they had their own set of rules. They had an elected leader, so it was a different type of state, and so it was much easier to exist in that state. And also there was the one part of Kievan Rus that remained a separate independent kingdom until it was a part of Austrian-Hungarian Empire. And then you can just imagine 3 different empires and lands split across those empires, and they all claimed the lands of each other. And so Ukraine was this contested area for all these years. And even if you look closer in the history into the Second World War, Hitler also, he wanted to take these territories because they could secure the food, they could secure the provision, everything that he needed. And so it was an important part of his plan. So the reason to attack Soviet Union and try to take all this land is to have those important lands in his empire. So empires were always fighting for this territory. And only in 1991, we actually had succeeded in separating and having our own independent state. All the previous attempts failed, and we had multiple throughout the history But I wouldn't bother you with all the dates and
I mean,
examples.
that's the first thing that I think when you say that is that 1991 wasn't that long ago.
Wasn't that long
That
ago.
at the free period, it's a crying shame.
And now you can imagine that it wasn't that long ago. And for people like Putin, for example, who's 70 plus years old, it's something that was, well, on his lifetime. He was a grown up man when he saw the collapse of the Soviet Union, which he called like the greatest, the worst thing that has happened in the history. So like for him, it was just, like a rebelled province. That's what
Yes,
it is for him. Any kind of any state, if you take any state from the Soviet Union, it would be just a province in rebellion for him. And so he will
right.
just not say that publicly until the moment he's actually in a war with that country.
Yeah. Yeah. Or as I like to call it, invading. Because I feel like a war often has two sides. And I don't think that the Ukraine would be invading Russia if it wasn't being invaded itself.
Yeah, that would be quite ridiculous, right? To invade the nuclear state, which is much bigger and stronger than you are. Yeah, I don't think it's possible in any of the realities.
No, no. And for a group of people who since the 90s are experiencing freedom and all of the changes that you described before, it wouldn't be logical. Could you talk a little bit about the variety of different states in Ukraine today? And you've talked about the different empires, and you can imagine I can imagine how they overlapped in different ways at different times. But there's a lot of variety within the country, right?
I wouldn't say there was too much. There is the main difference is that there were areas that were under Russian Empire for a long time, and there were areas that were in the Soviet Union for much less. So the eastern part of Ukraine, southeastern part of Ukraine, was heavily Russified. So all the big cities in southeastern Ukraine, they were industrial centers. So
Uh-huh.
during Soviet Union times, they were just taking one biggest settlement, and they were building a lot of factories, plants there, and they were relocating a lot of people from all over the Soviet Union to that region to build the industrial center. And so all the big cities in the south, almost all the big cities in the southeastern Ukraine, they are results of this exercise. So they have built the industrial center, they have populated it with a lot of people, and so all the work, you were mandated to speak Russian, to learn Russian, all the education was in Russian. So the only way for you to go up the ladder in those times, in the beginning of the industrial era in the Soviet Union, is you move from a small village to the big industrial city. You have to go and get your education in Russian language, and you go work and you speak Russian because that's the main language in the big industrial city. And so that's the same thing that happens all over the eastern, southeastern Ukraine, and that created the biggest division. So that now, still by this moment, southeastern Ukraine is mostly Russian speaking. So people speak Ukrainian there only if they're living in small towns or villages, or if they just consciously switch to Ukrainian and they just don't want to speak Russian. Like many of my friends.
And you grew up speaking Russian, is that right?
Exactly. Yes. So I was speaking Russian as my main language until the full scale invasion in 2022. So I
mean, even that is just, I find it hard to imagine as a kid from an island on the exact other side of the world, New Zealand, where everybody spoke English and some people spoke little patches of Māori and maybe a little bit of the European language that they brought with them from wherever they come from in the world, or perhaps an Asian or an Indian language. I can't imagine a country being invaded, although I grew up with stories of that during the Blitz, as I mentioned, from London. I can't imagine a country changing language and needing to. It's a real moment, right?
It's not like you're supposed to do that. It's just that some people feel like they just don't want to speak Russian anymore. Like they just
Fair
don't want
enough.
to be associated with it. They want to make all this little contribution so that they stop speaking Russian and they teach their kids to speak Ukrainian, and so they just don't want to continue the chain. They just don't want to cut this loose. And a lot of people who keep speaking Russian as their main language still, they just do that because it is too comfortable. It's very easy to abolish the native language. If you have never tried that, well, it's very hard to just abolish the language that you have been speaking and thinking from the moment that you just started speaking and thinking, and switch to something else. Even though
Can you remember?
Yeah.
Can you remember the moment when you started to dream in Ukrainian?
First weeks, probably, yeah, first weeks. It was easier for me because in the first weeks of the full-scale invasion, we moved to the western part of Ukraine, which is Ukrainian speaking only. And it was much easier to switch because we were talking Ukrainian there with everyone. And so after some time, you just start, dreaming. And also I do see dreams in different languages still. So I can have a dream that will have a combination of different languages, depending on what happened during the previous day. It's like, I'll have a conversation with you today and I may have a dream in English. So also possible.
Yeah, that's fascinating for someone who grew up with one language and seeks as many as I can absorb, but really only can order coffee and say thank you, generally. There's a story that you told me once, which I think gives a bit of maybe a medieval kind of image of Ukraine and what it might have been like. And it was about the traveling bards. Do you want to share that story?
Oh, yeah.
Really interesting.
Quite a popular story in Ukraine. Ukraine had this unique type of people. They were called Kobzars. So they were people who were actually blind, and they were traveling around the country, and they were singing different traditional songs. So they were collecting the songs from the people, and they were playing a very complex instrument that is called bandura. So if anyone, I don't remember the exact number of strings, but it's close to 100, I think. So it's like a very complex tool. It's very hard to play it. And so they were playing this thing, and I said it's called bandura, but it's called kobza. Well, it's different too, but still. So they were playing this very complex instrument, and they were singing different traditional songs. And so that was like one of the ways to spread the culture. And so the way it cultivated during the Russian Empire times, where Ukrainian literature was dismissed. So you couldn't print. You were not allowed to print Ukrainian literature, anything in Ukrainian language. So you were not allowed to use that Ukrainian language for education. And so they just had a number of different laws that prevented using Ukrainian in any shape or form. So it only remained in the speaking form. So people were still speaking it, and so you couldn't just come and make everyone speak different language in all different villages. So people kept speaking Ukrainian, and so you couldn't write down different songs and stories because you were not allowed to do that. It was a criminal act to write down a Ukrainian song. So what people were doing, they were just singing those songs, and those people, they were traveling around the country, collecting all these different songs and sharing them. So they just kept circulating throughout the country, and they were kept sharing those songs. And they existed for many centuries, actually, until the Soviet Union time. And during Soviet Union time, there was one thing that Soviets organized, and also it's probably not a well-known fact, but in the beginning of the Soviet Union, communists were very much supportive of all the different national ideas. So they were supportive of Ukrainian language and Ukrainian culture, same as any other culture as well within Soviet Union. So they were trying to play nice, on the contrary. So they were putting themselves as this nice new type of people who are not monarchy, who are a different type of world. They stand for all the just and good things, that regular people will have power and not just some monarchs will have power. And so they were supporting all these different national movements, ideas, etc. And so people started trusting them, and they started using all these different things that Soviets tried to give and help to organize different concerts, different things. So it was like a boom, quick but very short boom of Ukrainian culture in 1920s. And so there was one event in Kharkiv where Soviets actually organized that event, and they brought all the Kobzars, all of those people. They brought all of them where they could source them. And they imprisoned and then executed all of them. And so that was like one of the ways to kill something that was circulating for a couple of centuries in the area, or even longer. So
that's the sad part of the story.
Yeah. And so that was a sad part. And I think that the rest, like the remaining Kobzars who existed, there were just not enough of them to keep it.
Yeah. And it's both beautiful, this idea of the traveling minstrel, which was a thing in lots of cultures, wasn't it? I particularly love the fact that there were people that were blind, because to give people who have a disadvantage, like a lack of sight, such a purpose and something that brings people so much joy and shares the culture. And yeah, I find that really inspiring. Of course, the end, yeah, it feels very, I've just watched the Star Wars movies, so you can imagine which side of the Star Wars game that sounds like it comes from. Little hint, they have a Death Star.
Yeah. Well, we can tell a lot of stories that will end up sad and that involve the Soviet Union. So it was really, I don't remember exactly who called them the Empire of Evil, but it really was an Empire of Evil for a lot of nations and people. So I don't want to spend time talking about all the crimes and horrible things that they have done, but yeah, we should be happy that this thing no longer exists. And so whoever is trying to revive it, they need to be stopped.
And that really is the message. This kind of atrocity should not and cannot happen again, certainly not in our names. And may it come to an end soon.
Just not to talk about only the negative things. People talk lately a lot about the World War III and all the horrible things, but I do have this deep belief inside me that we did evolve as human beings, as people, enough to prevent that. So it may seem that, well, we're living in not in the nicest times today, that a lot of bad things are happening, but I still believe that we can turn it around. And so that there are so many great things that a lot of great people are doing. And so I just don't want to believe that all these bad things can overshadow all the good things that other people are doing. So yeah, I just do want to put it back on the positive track.
Sure. And that's one of the most remarkable things about you and about people that adapt and can still remain optimistic and still see through the current events and see the good in humanity and the possibilities. Let's spend a bit of time now talking about the ways that you have adapted. Not the ways that you have adapted in terms of sleeping pattern, but the sorts of things that you've realized from the effect that the war was having on you and the way that you have started to handle that. Because I think this whole area is remarkable, and there's a lot in here that will help anybody, a lot of realizations that are really valuable.
Well, yeah, I think that's, any event like this, any crisis in your life is a chance to make a change. And so I did have to make a lot of changes in my life. And probably the main things that I have done is that, first of all, I did start going to therapy. And I think this is a very useful thing to do. A lot of things that I then discovered, they came as results of my reflections and discussions that I had with therapists, and things that I kind of have as a part of my regular routine that helped me a lot. They're very simple. They don't require a lot of effort, actually. So probably the main thing that I would love to highlight is the journal. So if you do journaling, it helps a lot. Like, you can start with simple things. You can start with like one sentence a day that you add there, and so you just let it evolve naturally into something that you want this to be. And so I don't think there is any right or wrong way to have your journal. It's like your chance once a day to just sit back and really feel like your day went by. And something that I realized, that when I started doing this thing, I didn't have a single bad day. Like, regardless of all the events, regardless of all the things that has happened, I didn't have a single bad day. Like, when you actually sit and reflect on the things that has happened throughout the day, how you feel, what you have inside you, what kind of emotions you had, you realize that bad things are just different emotions that you had inside you, that you didn't know how to unfold them, how to deal with them. So you just unpack it, and you see them as separate emotions that happened, see separate things that has happened inside you, and they're not actually you. So it's not that you had a horrible day. No, you had some events that made you feel angry, sad, frustrated, whatever, and it's not you. It's just a thing that you had inside you, something you felt, something you didn't know how to express, maybe. And so then when you give yourself time and a chance to actually feel it, look at it, and realize that it's not you, it's just a thing that has happened, that helps a lot. Like, you can actually remove yourself, detach yourself from that thing, and so that helps a lot. So that's probably the main instrument that I have to make sure that I have a healthy life mentally. And second thing is,
That's amazing. Amazing that you don't, that your reflection is that there were no bad days. There were just things that happened that you had a emotional reaction to. I mean, that just blows my mind.
well, imagine the day itself. Like, you had 1, 2, 3 maybe bad events, right? But the day itself, like, there is billions of things that has happened throughout that day. Like, how can that be a bad day? So yes, there is things that has been in that day, parts of it that made you feel something, and especially when we don't know what we have felt, like when we couldn't live through the emotion correctly. So that's the thing that bugs us mostly. Like, if you just, if you ask someone like, how are you feeling, and someone just tells you, well, I'm just feeling bad, and they cannot differentiate bad, how, what is bad that you feel. And when you can differentiate, when you can understand the what, not understand but feel like what this thing is, that's when you set free from it.
Well said. Well said.
Well, apart from that, definitely something that helps is just a healthy routine, so that you have your morning moments for yourself before you do work, that you have your stable things in life. That helps a lot. And also, one thing that helped me is reducing the amount of the decisions that I have to make throughout every single day. We have to make hundreds, maybe thousands of little small decisions, like, what do I want to eat? Do I want this or that? Should I pick up this phone call or should I ignore it? All these decisions, they take energy. They take your mental capacity. And so the more little decisions you have to make, the easier it becomes for you to live the life. So I did, at some point where I felt overwhelmed, I just tried to optimize that. And so I optimized the way how I eat, I optimized the way how I do groceries, how I do all the different home chores. And so
What do you mean when you say optimized?
for example, I did order the food delivery, and
Yep.
so instead of just going shopping and making decisions of what I need all the time, trying to keep track of what I have in my fridge, what I don't, I just outsourced that. So I had a meal delivered to me every morning. So I just picked up this meal, and so it had breakfast, second breakfast, lunch, etc. in it. And so I had all the things that I needed and I didn't have to make a single decision. I just had to pick it up in the morning. So that's just one of the ways how you can optimize something if you don't want to spend time making all these little decisions. And so you can actually optimize almost anything like that. So if you make the decision once and you set it up, it just keeps working. Even if you do things yourself with your own hands, still, if you don't have to make the decision, if something is already prepared in advance, that just takes a lot of mental pressure from you, because you don't have to decide. You just need to make it.
You know, I have a few subscriptions, come to think of it, around food. One of those particularly is in coffee, and as you know, that's a very important part of life to me.
Yeah.
And to have just to know that once a month a kilo of decaf proper fair trade coffee is going to arrive, and that the beans will be there, and I can grind them when I need them. What's really interesting is when we go away, or we use more coffee than we normally do, and I have to change the subscription. That actually creates quite a lot of anxiety, and I guess that's me realizing how much I've removed that decision otherwise in my normal life. Interesting.
You know, we're talking about this habits and how people work, how we as human beings operate, right? If you make a subscription, which takes like $1 from you every month, and you don't use that application, for example, anymore, it is very unlikely that you will go and do the unsubscribe, because it's not too much. Yes, you're not using it, but maybe you will start using it. So it requires an action from you. It requires a decision. So you have to decide, you have to go and unsubscribe, though it will take seconds, most likely, for you to do. Well, maybe under 1 minute, maybe. But still, people don't want to make decisions. People don't want to make those things constantly. Like we just have too much of them. The way that human beings were evolutionary set up, we didn't have to make as many decisions, split-second decisions a few hundred years ago, right? But now when we live in this in the digital era, once again, when you look at the news feed, for example, or I know you're watching Instagram Reels or TikToks, everything that you look at, you process it, and in your head you're making decisions about, like, did I like it or did I not like it? About the content, like you can also make decisions about the content itself. It's like there, with every single post that you will look, or news, one set of news that you will see in your newsletter, all of that requires little decisions. And so we overwhelm ourselves with those decisions. So if you can reduce those amounts of those decisions, that just cleans up the head.
Yeah. I think that's a real insight. And you know, if we think about these, for example, when this came into my life, I remember I can remember the first, and this is showing my age, I remember the first time that I saw a friend's, Sam's, iPhone. And I had a normal Nokia phone that had a joystick in the middle, and it was color, and it had proper sound on its ringtones, and I was excited. And then he came along and he picked up his phone and he said, I want to show you this cool video from this party that we had. And he went like that, and the video started playing, and I was like, whoa. And I also thought, that's a computer. And then the next thought that I had was, that's amazing, I want one. And then the next thought that I had was, do I want a computer in my pocket? Because the moment that I'd recently been given a laptop for a job I was doing, and people said, one of the older sales guys, I remember him saying, yes, when they give you a laptop, that means you're going to be working more and from more places. Be very careful. And I was like, whatever, you don't know what you're talking about. But I thought I had the same thought about the smartphone, right? And it's taken me years to realize the effect that it's been having on me and people around me, to the point that, as you know, I've changed all of my icons to black and white, so that no longer do these primary colors jump out at me and say, open WhatsApp, check if you have messages. And that made a big difference. My phone has been on silent for about 9 years. And that's been really important. All apps notifications are now turned off, except those from my wife, or text messages, because you might be getting a delivery. So, but that's made a huge difference. And it actually surprises me when I watch TV shows and people are constantly getting interrupted by their phones. In fact, it's a plot device now, isn't it? When you watch Netflix, that bing, something's occurred, and it's so important that we contain this really angry, demanding toddler that we have in our pocket, right?
Yeah, I think the demanding toddler is inside us, and it's just a very easy access.
Yeah, good observation. So,
Yeah, but yeah, go
go
ahead.
on.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what are some other things that you've learned in the last couple of years about yourself and about life? Because this is an area that I've really enjoyed talking about over the last 6 months. So I'm sure there's some things you'd like to share.
Well, there were a lot of things. I do think that I, well, almost probably discovered myself within those years, because there were a lot of time to reflect. There were a lot of there was a great need for me to reflect on my life, and so yeah, probably the main thing is that I discovered myself, and I do have a few things that I believe are very important in life. So the first one that really sticks with me for the rest of my life, I think, is that we constantly live in the past or in the future. We are either thinking about things that has happened already, or we're thinking about things that are going to happen in the future. And I did learn to enjoy the moment, to enjoy the actual thing that is happening right now. And because if I would be thinking about the future all the time, I would be just constantly anxious in this environment, in this level of uncertainty that I have. And once again, so I mentioned to you in the beginning that I had this drone uh, hitting the building outside of my windows right here. And if I would be worrying about the future too much, I would be thinking that my building would be the next one and things like that. So if I don't do that, if I just live in this moment here and now, where I just sit and talk to you, I can enjoy this moment. I can enjoy this conversation, and so I can stay here. And regardless of all the horrible events that are happening, I can still enjoy my life. And yeah, if I would be either in thoughts of the past or the future, I wouldn't be able to do that. I would be just taking some medicine to reduce my levels of anxiety and try to cope. So that is probably the most important thing that I didn't just under, understand, but I actually felt it, like, because you need to feel it, and so then it sticks. And that's
I think
probably
that's amazing. What a realization, and what an important realization.
also that is the thing that helps, like when you have moments where, well, it's scary, you hear explosions and things like that. So apart from just being adjusting to the fact that this is happening, also, like, if you are in the present moment, you're not worrying about the future, but you're actually living through what's happening in the moment, it's less scary. Like, you don't feel fear that much. So it's also a good way of um, breaking away from fear. Because if you're not because fear exists in the future. It's you fear of something that might happen,
Yes.
and not of the actual thing that is around you at the moment. So that is one of the things that helps a lot in this whole situation, especially with the uncertainty. And probably that's the key one. And another important observation is that um, it is really important to have people around you. So having people around you helps you with in so many different ways, because every single person that you have around you, they are different, and they highlight different things in your life and in yourself. And I did have this tendency before, like when I was younger, to shut down and to process everything that I have on my own, just with myself. And so what I have learned to do is to open up more, talk more to people, share more, ask for help when needed. That's the hardest part for me personally. So I did learn a lot about that. And I do enjoy that I have a lot of people around me. And I appreciate that I have all these people around me. And probably when I was younger, I couldn't understand the value of those people.
Yes, I share that reluctance to ask for help. And whenever I do, it's almost a surprise. It almost feels like an outpouring of support that I did not expect. Is that what you're describing?
Well, for me, it was always problematic to ask for help because I was taught when I was a kid that I have to go through my problems myself, and
Right.
so that's the right thing to do for a man. But I did change this perspective. Also, I think that I did change a lot of things about what I think a man is, and so from a given set of things that I was taught when I was a kid, it changed to something completely new. Because also one of the realizations is that like a lot of us, a lot of things that we believe in, they were something that we were told when we were young or we were kids, and we just keep carrying that knowledge and that fact as it was true, and we don't check it with reality. So we just accept what we were told when we were young, when we were kids, and so we just then carry on with that stuff.
When it's just something that someone said once.
Yeah, and you just remember that as a fact. So
Yeah.
removing those barriers in your head helps a lot. When you don't have this fixed view of the world that this is black, this is white, this is the right thing to do for a man, this is the right thing to do for a woman, this is the right thing to do for a citizen, this is the right thing to do for a leader. The concept of right, like what is the correct thing to do, just changed completely. So I don't have those fixed views anymore, and I do think that it is a lot of things that has happened because of the war and everything in my life. I did change that point of view. I did break free from from the fixed points of view, and so I think I'm just trying to feel more what is right for myself, rather than trying to just stay with a fixed point of view.
Well, if you ever write a book, I will read it. Because thank you for sharing those observations. They're really powerful.
That means a lot.
No, I absolutely mean it. And that's the reason that I do this, right? In my spare time for no money, because I'm interested and I know that in this time in the world, it's really important that we listen to each other. And
Absolutely.
that's what leads to these kinds of realizations and the sharing of knowledge. Thank you so much for taking this time and for sharing so much of what's going on. And I really hope that one day someone listens to this and thinks, "Oh, there was an invasion in Ukraine. There's a free country now."
Yeah, that would be a great time. Also, thank you for having me here. I'm not sure if we actually succeeded in achieving any of the expected outcomes of this conversation. I think it was just going from one direction to another direction to third direction. So it was just waving like this all the time. And I don't think we have discussed anything related to our work-related stuff, though we were working together. And that was a product management related conversation.
But we will have that on another show called Product SOS, where Artem will be a guest, maybe more than once, when we give people advice on problems that they're having anonymously. And I think that's really important, because sometimes we can't ask the questions that we need to ask if our face and our business and our job is associated with it. Sometimes we just need safe advice that comes from the right place. So you'll have plenty of opportunities to help people there with that.
That would be
But
great.
thank you. Thank you for all that you've shared. And thank you for listening, folks. I hope this has been interesting. And just to set the record straight, although you were very modest, Artem, the goal going into this conversation, as I expressed it a couple of hours ago when Artem asked me, what are you thinking we can get out of this, was to share the experience of what it's like living in Kyiv right now, what it's like to be in the Ukraine right now, and for the audience to have a chance through that window to look in to what daily life is like and make a decision about whether this is okay or not. And then lastly, to come away with what I hope you have, which is a feeling that so much has been learned, so much wisdom you've just shared that can apply to people's lives as they are today, whether it's because I'm worried about whether the landscape is going to do exactly what I asked, or whether it's because I'm worried about whether it's going to rain soon because it's been so drought conditions, or whether it's something else in my life. And that, I think we've definitely achieved that. So thank you.
Hope so. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in, folks. There will be more of these episodes in this season, and make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss out. Artem, until next time.
Until next time. Bye, Oli.